She thought it was just a kind act, returning a lost wallet without expecting anything in return. But what she didn't know was that the wallet belonged to a young millionaire with a secret. What he did next will leave you speechless. The late afternoon sun had long disappeared behind thick gray clouds as Alina Mercer stepped out of Mel's diner, the same small-town eatery where she'd been pouring coffee and serving smiles for the last 6 years. Her back ached. Her shoes, worn down from years of use, let in just enough of the slushy sidewalk to leave her socks damp. The air carried that biting November chill that sneaks into your bones, and Belmere's wind had a special talent for making you feel lonelier than you already were. Alina wrapped her coat tighter around herself, though the fabric had long lost its ability to hold in warmth. She looked down at her cracked phone screen to check the time. Nearly 8 p.m. She had missed the last bus, and the next wouldn't arrive for another 45 minutes. Walking home it was. Again. She adjusted the strap on her bag, heavy with a borrowed library book, a notepad filled with her scribbled dreams, and a half-eaten sandwich wrapped in wax paper. Her earnings that day had barely reached $27 after tips. A few coins jingled in her pocket, hardly enough for groceries, much less the overdue rent notice pinned to her apartment door. As she passed a dimly lit stretch of Ellington Street, something caught her eye. Lying near the curb, just beside a battered mailbox, was a black object that didn't seem to belong in this neighborhood. She stepped closer, her curiosity outweighing her exhaustion. It was a wallet. Not just any wallet. A sleek, hand-stitched leather wallet that practically screamed money. The leather was rich, dark, and smooth to the touch. She turned it over in her hands slowly, and of her breath forming small clouds in the cold air. She opened it. Inside were several neatly folded $100 bills, at least 5 or 6 of them, maybe more. Her fingers hesitated as they brushed against the edges of the cash. There was a platinum credit card tucked behind the cash slot, and a small stack of neatly kept business cards. Her eyes landed on one of the cards. J. Corbin Hale, Horizon Innovations CEO. The name meant nothing to her at first, but it certainly sounded important. And judging by the wallet, its owner wasn't short on money. Alina's stomach tightened. It was the kind of money that could change her month. The kind of money that meant a full pantry, a warm coat, a paid phone bill so she could finally call her sister without worrying about the minutes. She looked around. The street was empty. A few flickering street lamps cast pools of yellow light on the cracked sidewalk. A cat darted out from under a car, startling her slightly. But other than that, nothing. No witnesses, no cameras, no one to tell her what to do. But Alina already knew. Her mother's voice echoed gently in her memory, a quiet truth she'd heard since childhood. What doesn't belong to you is not yours to keep. The words didn't sound heroic in her mind. They were just simple, honest. The way her mother had lived, and the way she had tried to live too, even when life made that kind of honesty feel foolish. She closed the wallet, taking a deep breath. Her fingers still trembled. It would have been so easy to just take a little. Just one bill. Who would know? But she would. With a long sigh, she slipped the wallet into her bag, carefully, almost reverently, and began walking in the direction of the nearest police station. It was only a few blocks away. But after a few steps, she slowed. Something inside her hesitated, not out of guilt or fear, but curiosity. What kind of person carried around this kind of money and left it behind? Would the police even return it to him properly? Would anyone believe that she hadn't taken anything? She pulled out the business card again, tracing the embossed lettering with her thumb. Maybe, just maybe, she could return it herself. A small act, a strange idea. But for some reason, it felt right. And so with the icy wind nipping at her heels and her thoughts racing ahead, Alina Mercer made a decision that would unknowingly shift the course of her life. In the penthouse office of a high-rise overlooking the glass and steel skyline of Belmere City, Julian Corbin Hale, known to most simply as Corbin Hale, stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows with a scotch in his hand and a storm in his mind. To the world, he was a genius, a visionary. The man who, at only 32, had founded Halo Systems, a tech company that revolutionized AI-driven healthcare diagnostics. Investors worshipped him. Magazines called him a modern-day Edison, and his inbox was a graveyard of invitations to galas, summits, and private islands. But today, none of that mattered. His day had unraveled from the start. A tense boardroom meeting ended with one partner threatening to pull funding over a disagreement in product rollout. A scheduled interview with a major tech outlet turned into a glorified puff piece where the reporter was more interested in gossip than innovation. And lunch with an old acquaintance, someone who once knew him before the headlines, only proved how hard it had become to distinguish between genuine interest and opportunistic flattery. He'd been so distracted, he hadn't even realized his wallet was gone. It wasn't until late in the evening when his ever-efficient assistant, Trina, stopped by his office with a concerned expression. "You're missing something," she said, holding up a small tracker app on her tablet. "Your wallet pinged across town, nowhere near where you've been today." Corbin frowned. Must have dropped it near the parking garage, or maybe outside the coffee place this morning. Already checked both. It's gone. Great, just what he needed. The wallet wasn't just about cash or cards. It had personal things, things people wouldn't expect from a man like him. An old photo of his parents when they still lived in a one-bedroom flat on the south side. A keycard to a storage unit with his grandfather's belongings. A handwritten quote from his mother folded into the inner pocket. "You don't know who you are until you have nothing to prove." He sighed and dropped into his chair. Another annoyance, another reason to shut the world out. But then, hours later, just as he was about to shut down his phone for the night, it buzzed. An unknown number lit up the screen. He let it ring twice before answering. "This is Corbin," he said, his tone clipped. There was a pause on the other end. Then a voice, gentle, hesitant, but composed. "Hello? Is this Mr. Hale?" His brow lifted. "Yes, speaking." I found your wallet earlier today. I thought I should return it. Is there a way we could meet?" Corbin sat up straighter. That wasn't what he expected. No demands, no questions, just a straightforward offer. He cleared his throat. "You found my wallet? You're sure?" "Well, it had your name and business card. I didn't take anything. I just thought it was important to get it back to you." There was a strange sincerity in her voice. He could hear the effort it took for her to call. She didn't sound like someone looking for a reward, or worse, a favor. She sounded like someone just doing the right thing. "And your name?" he asked. "Alina Mercer." He repeated it in his mind. It felt calm, real. Like someone who hadn't been trained to impress, who spoke not with polish, but with purpose. "Thank you, Miss Mercer," he said after a moment. "I'd like to meet tomorrow morning. There's a cafe on Greenway Avenue, the Velvet Mug. Ever been?" "No, but I can find it." "Perfect. Say 10 o'clock? I'll be there." The call ended, and Corbin found himself still holding the phone long after the screen had gone black. Something about the call lingered. Maybe it was the normalcy of it, the sheer humanity of someone calling just to return a wallet, expecting nothing. He stood again at the window, watching Belmere City sparkle beneath the night sky. He'd lost a wallet, but maybe, just maybe, he was about to find something else. The next morning arrived wrapped in a golden haze, sunlight stretching lazily across the streets of Belmere City. The air was still crisp, but the bite of the previous night's wind had softened. Alina Mercer stood outside the Velvet Mug, a cozy, tucked-away cafe nestled between a bookstore and an old flower shop on Greenway Avenue. She glanced through the cafe window, nervous fingers adjusting the strap of her purse. She had dressed simply. Clean jeans, a soft sweater, and a coat borrowed from her neighbor. She didn't own fancy clothes, and she doubted she ever would. But this wasn't a job interview or a date. She was just returning something that didn't belong to her. Still, a flutter stirred in her stomach. Inside, Corbin, who had arrived 10 minutes early, was seated at a small corner table, his back to the window, scanning the cafe's chalkboard menu while pretending not to check the door every minute. When she walked in, something about her presence drew him in immediately, unassuming, honest, and completely unlike anyone in his usual orbit. "Miss Mercer?" he asked as she approached, rising from his seat. Alina nodded, offering a small, polite smile. "Alina, please." He returned the smile, holding out his hand. "Jay. Just Jay." She noticed the hesitation in his voice, but didn't question it. Names didn't matter much when your intent was clear. She pulled the wallet from her bag and handed it over. "Everything's in there. I didn't touch anything," she said, almost defensively. "I believe you," he replied without even checking the contents. That small act, trust with verification, surprised her. "Would you join me for a cup of coffee?" he asked. As a thank you. Oh, that's really not necessary, she began. I insist. You've saved me a massive headache. Let me return the favor in the most caffeinated way possible. That made her laugh, a soft, genuine sound, and she nodded. Okay, but just coffee. They placed their orders, black for him, oat milk latte for her, and sat by the window, where the morning sun streamed through and painted the table in golden light. For a few minutes, they talked about safe topics. The weather, the strange jazz playlist drifting through the cafe, the artwork hanging above the pastry case. But soon, the conversation deepened. Alina spoke without trying to impress. She shared how she worked 2 jobs, one at a diner, one at a bookstore, to make ends meet. How she wanted to go back to school one day, to study literature, or maybe psychology if she could ever afford it. She talked about her mother, who had passed away 3 years ago, and the things she'd taught her, like always doing the right thing, even if no one notices. My mom used to say, integrity isn't about grand gestures, it's about small decisions every day, she said, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. Corbin listened, captivated. Her words weren't rehearsed, they were lived. He was so used to conversations wrapped in ego or ambition that her quiet sincerity felt revolutionary. What about you? She asked eventually. What do you do, Jay? He hesitated, just for a second, then answered smoothly. I work in tech, consulting mostly, nothing too glamorous. It wasn't a complete lie, but not the full truth either. Something about Alina made him want to hold back the weight of who he was. He didn't want the Corbin Hale part to get in the way. With her, he wasn't a symbol of success or a headline. He was just a guy in a cafe, drinking coffee with a woman who made him feel real. She didn't press him. Didn't ask about his income or his connections or what car he drove. She just smiled and nodded and shared another story about the bookstore cat who liked to knock over mystery novels. As the minutes turned to an hour and the hour quietly stretched into 2, Corbin realized he was no longer just thanking her. He was trying to know her. And for the first time in a long while, someone was seeing him. Not the billionaire, not the CEO, not the brand, just him. The days that followed their first coffee felt like something borrowed from a life Alina never believed she'd get to live. Her phone, once filled only with reminders and missed calls from landlords or work shifts, now buzzed with texts from Jay, casual jokes, questions about her day, photos of oddly shaped clouds he claimed looked like dragons. He made the ordinary feel alive again, and she let him in. Slowly, at first, carefully, like someone stepping onto ice, unsure if it would hold. They met for coffee on her breaks, took long walks through Belmere's quieter neighborhoods. Once he even showed up outside her bookstore job with 2 cups of hot cocoa and no agenda. He never asked for more than her company, never pressured her to impress. He listened when she talked about her father, who had passed away when she was 17. He held her hand gently when she admitted how lonely things had gotten since her mom died, and how hard it was to trust anyone in a world that often only took and rarely gave back. Jay never made her feel like a project. He made her feel like a person. And that, more than anything, terrified her, because Alina had built high walls around her heart, walls made of grief, disappointment, and lessons learned the hard way. But somehow, this man, soft-spoken, attentive, with tired eyes that had seen too much, was slipping past every barrier. What she didn't know, of course, was that he had a mask of his own. Jay wasn't some anonymous tech consultant. He wasn't just another guy who happened to lose his wallet. He was Corbin Hale, the Corbin Hale, multimillionaire, innovator, and media darling. And every day he spent with her under a false name felt like walking on a wire stretched between truth and betrayal. He told himself he was protecting something pure. He told himself that if she knew who he was too soon, it would change everything. People always treated him differently once they knew. Their voices changed, their posture shifted, their eyes sparkled, not with interest, but opportunity. He had grown tired of that hollow affection. But with Alina, he could just be Jay, a man with stories, a man with regrets, a man who had found someone who didn't want anything from him but time and sincerity. He meant to tell her. He really did. But the moment never felt right. And then she found out. It happened on a quiet Thursday night. Alina had just finished folding laundry and was curled up in bed, scrolling through articles for her bookstore's weekend newsletter. She came across a headline from a business site she normally ignored. Corbin Hale announces new AI venture set to revolutionize mental health access. She almost scrolled past until her thumb froze. There at the top of the article was his picture, a recent one. His sharp features, tousled hair, and the same quiet eyes that had watched her sip coffee just a few days ago. Her breath caught in her throat. No nickname could disguise that face. No casual conversation could erase the truth staring back at her. Jay was Corbin. And suddenly, everything tilted. She remembered all the little moments, when he dodged questions about his past, his vague answers about his work, how he always insisted on paying but never made a big deal of it. Her heart began to race. This wasn't a harmless omission. This was a lie. Not just a slip of the tongue or a forgotten fact. He had created a version of himself, a version tailored to earn her trust, while keeping the truth locked away. To her, it felt like betrayal dressed as kindness. And it cut deeper because she had started to believe in him. When he called that night, she didn't answer. Not the first time. Not the fifth. Not even when he left a voice message, his voice quiet and hesitant. "Alina, I need to explain. Please. Just give me a chance." But she couldn't. Not yet. She needed space to breathe, to think, to piece herself back together before deciding whether the version of him she knew, the version she trusted, was real at all. For the next several days, Alina vanished. No replies. No texts. She skipped shifts at the bookstore and stayed with her cousin across town, letting the silence stretch between them like a wall neither of them knew how to climb. Corbin had faced public scrutiny before, angry investors, competitors in the press, even false tabloid stories. But none of that compared to the ache he felt now, standing in silence with only unanswered calls echoing back at him. Alina was gone, and he couldn't blame her. He had lied, not with malicious intent, but with fear. Fear of losing something that felt genuine. Fear that if she knew who he was from the start, she'd put him on a pedestal or walk away, assuming they came from worlds too different to ever understand each other. He wasn't hiding to deceive her. He was hiding to protect something real, the one connection in his life that wasn't shaped by headlines, bank accounts, or expectations. But in doing so, he had broken her trust. And now he had to earn it back. Days passed. He retraced their steps, walked the sidewalks they'd strolled together, revisited the cafe where she first returned his wallet. Nothing. She hadn't been back to the bookstore either, at least not during her usual shifts. Her phone stayed dark. The city, for all its noise, had swallowed her in silence. He could have used his resources to find her, his team, his tech, even private investigators. But that felt wrong. That wasn't what love did. So he waited, patiently, hoping she'd reappear, hoping he'd get the chance to explain. And then on a rainy Saturday afternoon, he saw her. Through the fogged-up window of Rosewell Books, the quiet little shop tucked between a pharmacy and a tea room, she stood behind the register, sliding bookmarks into a stack of new arrivals. She wore a navy cardigan and her hair was pulled back loosely, strands falling gently over her face. She looked tired, pale, like someone who hadn't slept much. But she was there. Corbin pushed open the door, the soft bell above chiming his arrival. The smell of paper and cinnamon hung in the air. Alina looked up. Their eyes met. She froze. Her hands hovered above the books as if unsure whether to reach for them or drop them entirely. She didn't say a word. Neither did he, for a long moment. The sound of rain tapping against the glass filled the space between them. Then he took a quiet step forward. "I didn't come here to defend what I did," he said gently, "only to tell you why I did it." She didn't stop him, but she didn't move either. He continued, his voice lower now. "I didn't tell you who I really was because I didn't want that part of me to get in the way. Every time someone knows my name, they see headlines, money, power. That's not what I wanted you to see." She swallowed hard, her expression unreadable. "I wanted you to know me," he said. "Not Corbin Hale, just Jay. The man who still carries a note from his mother in his wallet. The man who kept coming back because you made him feel human again." Alina's eyes shimmered with unshed tears, but she held her ground. "And how do I know who that is anymore?" she asked, her voice shaking. "How do I know which version of you I was falling for?" Corbin reached into his coat and pulled something from the inside pocket, the wallet. The same one she had returned, untouched, all those weeks ago. He held it out to her, not as a symbol of wealth, but as a reminder. Because this This was where it all started, he said. And you, Alina, you're the woman who didn't take a single dollar from it. You could have walked away. No one would have blamed you, but you didn't. And that's the moment I started falling for you. She looked down at the wallet, then back up at him. Her walls, fortified by pain and pride, trembled. I don't need you to be perfect, he added, stepping closer. I just need you to be honest with me, and I promise I'll do the same. Alina took a long breath. The weight of betrayal, the confusion, the hurt, it hadn't vanished. But something else was there too. Something that whispered not everything had been a lie. Because while he had hidden part of himself, the man she had come to know, the one who laughed at her bookstore stories, who stayed up late to hear her thoughts, who made her feel seen, had been real. She looked at the wallet in his hand, then at the man holding it. Her heart beat like thunder in her chest. I need time, she said softly. I need to find a way to trust you again. Corbin nodded, his gaze steady. I'll wait, as long as it takes. And for the first time since she found that article, Alina allowed herself to hope, not just in him, but in the kind of love worth fighting for. Time, as always, became the true test. In the weeks that followed their reunion, Alina and Corbin didn't fall back into old rhythms as easily as they might have hoped. Love, real love, doesn't erase hurt. It learns to grow beside it. There were moments of silence, times when doubts crept in and questions hung heavy between them. But there were also moments of laughter, quiet comfort, and rediscovered trust. They talked, deeply, often. Sometimes through long walks in the park, sometimes over cups of tea in her tiny apartment, sometimes in total silence, just sitting beside each other with hearts slowly stitching themselves back together. They fought, too, about what had been hidden, about what could have been done differently. But even in their fights, there was a thread of care, of wanting to be understood, not just to be right. And through it all, Corbin never rushed her. He didn't try to buy back her trust with gifts or grand gestures. Instead, he gave her something much more valuable: consistency. He showed up, every time. Whether it was to help her reorganize the bookstore shelves after hours or bring her soup when she was down with a cold, he made it clear he wasn't going anywhere. He introduced her to his world, piece by piece. Not the luxury and spotlights, but the real parts, the late nights of coding alone in an office, the pressures of leadership, the scars from past betrayals, the loneliness that not even success could quiet. And slowly, she let him into hers too. Stories of childhood dreams, poems she used to write, the way her mom used to sing while folding laundry. It wasn't easy, but it was real. And then, on a crisp spring morning, something beautiful happened. The bookstore was quiet, warmed by golden sunlight streaming through the front windows. A few early customers browsed in silence. Alina was restocking a shelf near the back, right between poetry and philosophy, her favorite corner of the shop. She turned around and froze. Corbin was kneeling on one knee, a small velvet box in his hand, nestled among books worn from love and time. There were no photographers, no fanfare. Just him, and her, and everything they had built between them. His voice was steady, but his eyes shimmered. I don't need you to believe in my bank account, he said. I just want you to believe in me, in us. Will you marry me, Alina? For a moment, the world held its breath. Alina looked at him, not the millionaire, not the man who once lied to her, but the one who stayed, who fought for her, who loved her with quiet strength. Tears welled in her eyes and spilled freely down her cheeks as she smiled. Yes, she whispered, 1,000 times, yes. There, among words and worn-out pages, their love story found its turning point. Not a fairy tale ending, but a beautiful beginning. Because in a world so often consumed by appearances and false promises, they had chosen something different, something rare. A connection built not on wealth or status, but on honesty, vulnerability, and love freely given. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. We have more stories like this, filled with hope, love, and the quiet beauty of doing the right thing. Turn on notifications so you never miss the next tale. Until next time, stay kind, stay true, and believe in real love.